This is the business, and y'all ain't getting nothing for free. And if you devils play broke, then I'm taking your company. You could call it reparations or restitution. Lock and load, nigga.
We've always said our best days are ahead of us. Freedom, opportunity, a better world for our children. But right now, that future is being taken from us. And while we don't always agree on how to turn the tide, there's one thing everyone can agree on. Something's broken. If you can't find a job, then you can't get insured, while the family next door fights foreclosure. While our country drowns in debt, your tax dollars go to waste, and 16 million American kids are in poverty. Pollution is everywhere. Society is fractured. Americans everywhere are barely getting by. This is not the America we were promised. This is not of, by, and for the people. We the people have been replaced, and money is all that matters in politics. Bribery has been legalized, elections are auctions, and our government is so corrupt that it no longer works for its people. We can fix this, but we can't just change the rules. We have to change the entire game. This is the American Anti-Corruption Act, and this changes everything. Eliminate corruption, end the auction, stop the bribery, get money out and the people will get back in. Economists and environmentalists, veterans and conservatives, activists for social justice, global warming, financial reform, and free markets. From the Tea Party to Occupy, Democrats, Republicans, independents, we will stand together as 1 million united citizens, because this is not about right versus left, it's about right versus wrong. And when there's 1 million of us standing, we'll get 2, and then 3, and we'll keep on standing until we don't need to ask our broken Congress to pass this law. We'll simply tell them, the time has come.
So if you've ever felt like your opinion doesn't matter and that the government doesn't really care what you think, well, you're right. But there's a catch. This flat line only accounts for the bottom 90% of income earners in America. Economic elites, business interests, people who can afford lobbyists, they get their own line. Look at how much closer their line is to the ideal. When they want something, the government is much more likely to do it. And when they don't, they have the power to completely block it from happening, no matter how much the rest of the country supports it. They get what they want, and guess who ends up paying for it? We pay for it with the most expensive healthcare in the world. We pay for it with a tax code that's a complete mess. We pay for it with internet that's slower and more expensive, with wasteful spending, a floundering education system, a catastrophic drug war, and 1 in 5 American children born into poverty. Almost every major issue we face as a nation can be traced back to this graph. How does this happen? Well, just follow the money. Right now, it's perfectly legal to buy political influence in America. Here's how it works. Let's say a big bank wants a law that would force taxpayers to bail them out again if they repeat the exact same reckless behavior that crashed the global economy in 2008. Not exactly the most popular idea with the public, and Congress knows that. That should be the end of it. But that's where the money comes in. It's perfectly legal for our bank to hire a team of lobbyists, whose entire job is to make sure that the government gives the bank what it wants. Then, those lobbyists can track down members of Congress who regulate banks and help raise a ton of money for their re-election campaigns. It's perfectly legal for those lobbyists to offer those same politicians million-dollar jobs at their lobbying firm. Then, those lobbyists can literally write the language of this new bailout law themselves and hand it off to the politician they just buttered up with campaign money and lucrative job offers. And it's perfectly legal for those politicians to take the lobbyist-written language and sneak it through Congress at the last second. So now you've got a law that greatly benefits the banks, and the whole process can start over. This is how a bill becomes a law. A special interest hires some lobbyists, those lobbyists collect campaign contributions, offer jobs, and then write the laws that Congress then passes to help those same special interests. This happens every day on every single issue with politicians of both parties. In the last 5 years alone, the 200 most politically active companies in the United States spent $5.8 billion influencing your government. those same companies got $4.4 trillion in taxpayer support. And that's trillion, with a T. And that's just the top 200 companies. Never mind every other special interest, every union, every trade association, and every billionaire. Every single one of them can use their money to buy political influence. You know, there's this idea out there that this only became a problem after the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision in 2010. But the data goes back almost 40 years, and the results are clear. Corruption is legal in America. And as long as it is, anyone who can spend money to buy political influence will. The solution here isn't rocket science. Make corruption illegal. We already know Congress won't do it. I mean, one look at this chart will tell you that. What we need is a plan that lets us go around Congress and do what the American people do best. Fix this mess ourselves.
Do you want to get rich? We are looking for candidates willing to become kleptocrats. Are you interested? You will have to rule people with an iron fist, disregard fundamental human rights, accumulate illicit wealth outside of public scrutiny, master banking systems and tax havens. For this job, an experience in money laundering, embezzlement and bribery is an asset, and a strong feeling of impunity is required. Today, World Bank estimates that my fellow kleptocrats accumulate $20 to $40 billion a year thanks to corruption.
Alaska Senator Ted Stevens was found guilty of lying about gifts he received from an oil services company, including improvements on his home. Stevens lost his re-election bid this year, ending a 40-year career in the Senate. William Jefferson, a congressman from Louisiana, is awaiting trial on charges of bribery and misusing his office. When federal agents raided his home in 2006, they found $90,000 in alleged bribes stashed in a freezer. Jefferson also lost his re-election bid. Alan Lichtman is a presidential historian at American University.
It is usually about money, but it's about something else as well. It's also about what I call the arrogance of power. These politicians think they are above the law, above common morality.
Lichtman says evidence of political corruption in America goes back many years. In the 1860s, just after the U.S. Civil War, during the administration of Ulysses S. Grant, corruption was so widespread that it was called the era of the Great Barbecue because crooked politicians enriched themselves in a country still recovering from conflict. In the 1920s, during Warren Harding's administration, the infamous Teapot Dome scandal led to the conviction of Interior Secretary Albert Fall on charges he accepted bribes to allow access to federal oil lands. The Watergate scandal in the 1970s led to the downfall of President Richard Nixon.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
Unfortunately, we have had corruption throughout American history, although it does seem to have reached a high point in recent years.
Despite the history, Americans believe the country is fundamentally moral and are outraged by corruption, Lichtman says.
And we at least now do have a political process that investigates corruption, indicts, and convicts.
The current political campaign finance system is corrupt and amounts to legalized bribery.
And let me tell you something, that's a corrupt system, that's a bad system. When that happens, that's a bad system.
End this inequality and corruption, give us a government free from the money, give us a Congress free to lead.